is a ritual I think I did even when I was last here, about remembering the heroes of the struggle, the revolution last year. It was 10 months ago. And these heroes were felled by the bullet or by other extrajudicial means. And I was at number 30. We do not want to forget the Gen Z that came out, the Mau Mau 2.0 heroes that we must recognize. So if you don't mind, I would like to just mention 10 more names.
Absolutely.
Chris Gitonga in Nanyuki, Carlton Mwangi, KNH Mortuary, Ernest Kanyi, KNH Mortuary, Brian Kimathi, KNH Mortuary, Bernard Kiplagat, MTRH Eldoret, Francis Kipkorir Sawe, MTRH Eldoret, Cholding Matlang, MTRH Eldoret, David Shaban Baraza, Mombasa, PGH, Clinton Mwavali Kapsabet Hospital, Mortuary, Brian Ezra Odhiambo, Rongo, and Bernard Mungai Duati, Kasarani Francis Mission Hospital. 10 more names. We've now reached 40. We have 2 more months and we have the anniversary. It's good to see BBC carrying this story tonight about the killing fields of Parliament. I hope every patriotic Kenyan will be watching like myself. I'm sure Du and everyone here will be there. Sad time that we imagine that 10 months later, nobody's been held to account.
Nope.
Nobody. It reminds me of the history we were told and the one that we have read of the terrible killings that happened pre-independence. The British say that they only killed 11,000 Mau Mau. The figures that are shown and written about, even by people like, I think it's the Sarah Eldekin, and not Sarah Eldekin, I think it was her. And I think they call them the imperialistic British, the book. And they talk about 300,000 there, right? We know there were even more than that.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, nobody was held to account. These are very similar times. Our fellow citizens, our countrymen, our patriots, our people who are standing up for all of us, are being executed by a regime that I would like to call not a regime, but just a private company. And that's one thing we all need to understand. We are in this problem because we actually just have a company that has extended itself until today, 63 years later. But really, it began 100 years ago. When I was last here, that's what we talked about.
Right.
But what is this system? What is it that keeps perpetuating itself, that continues and continues and continues and nothing changes? When our forefathers were fighting for independence, they fought for 2 things. One was for freedom, which was our political rights. And second was for our land, which was our economic rights. We were given our political rights. We went to the polls. We elected people. But we have always, even to the extent of the new constitution, been unable to get our economic rights, our economic justice. We just are unable, because what we have is a company, is a company. This was a company set up by Imperial British East Africa that became the government of Kenya.
When you say unable, Jimmy, I have a problem with that. That if I'm sitting in this chair, for example, I'm able-bodied. My legs work. Well, at least I think so. You know, my brain works. My hands work. My eyes work. My senses. I have my wits about me. And in order for me to go get some relief, I have to get out of this chair. So when you talk about inability, that means that I am lame. I cannot move. I do not have my senses, but I do have them. So my inability, that inability that you speak of for me, then is not that I am unable, is that I am unwilling. That if I was willing to stand up out of this chair to go and get some relief, that I would. So is it inability or unwillingness to get out of the shackles of that system?
You see, it was attempted before independence. That's what I'm talking about, the struggle towards independence. Both the Mau Mau struggle, which was out in the bush, and the civil one that was done mainly in Nairobi. It was attempted. It was for our freedom, and our land was economic. When independence came, all that happened was the company that was Muzungus became now Africans. The same company, right? And you need to understand it this way. It has ownership local in terms of surrogates, and it is owned by foreigners. That was the basis. IBEA, which became the government of Kenya, which colonized this country. It was a private company that colonized this country. All right? Principally was here to extract, exploit us, and dominate us. Right? Extraction does not mean that we benefit. They are taking from us. Right? So we got an election where principally the owners sit back and they make us go and elect a board of governors, because that's a company, board of directors. So we go and elect a president. We go and elect governors and MPs. That's the board of directors. The employees, who are the civil servants, if you look at most of their crop, many of them from the advent of independence were home guards, were chiefs, were administrators, right? They just carried on the same system. Today, for example, do you have a governor of Central Bank?
Yes.
Or a PS who has not been in IMF or World Bank?
Oh, no.
Right. The owners are still here. All right? They still control the employees. Okay? And then you have the police that protect that company. These police we are condemning and are going to be condemned on BBC tonight. These are the protectors of the company. And their job is to compete with us. Yes.
In what way?
And we've never understood it.
In what way?
We've never understood it.
In what way?
I'll give you a very basic example, because we are very good at talking about agriculture, for example. One of the crops that they found that they could grow in Kenya was coffee, right? And coffee was primarily taken to where they wanted to live. They wanted to live in Kenya area, Central Province, because they liked the weather. Kenya was a place that they came to as a settler community.
Yes.
If you look at Nigeria,
They came,
where
did the
Frederick
thing and
Lugard
left.
was there, because of the weather. It was primarily because of the weather. And then they found the people very difficult.
I mean, the people are very
so
stubborn.
they said they were governed through proxy, through chiefs.
Yes.
But here, Lugard came here, Frederick Lugard came here on the basis that they're going to settle in Kenya. So they went to plant their cash crops in the White Highlands in Eldoret, where they did a lot of tea, Kericho, all those areas. And then they came with coffee, Mount Kenya area, Kiambu area. Now, they came to grow coffee themselves on land they had taken. But they weren't enough. And they started realizing they were making a lot of profits. So they decided they were going to license the natives. We used to be called natives. They are going to license the natives to grow on their land. But they would come and measure. And they would measure with walking. Somebody would walk 10 steps this way, and say, you're allowed to plant here. Then you say, but can't I plant on my entire property? No. You plant here. We show you how to plant, and this is your license. If you go beyond that license, you have a problem. You go to jail. Okay? All right. Why was it being controlled? Today, you have a minister in agriculture who stands up and says, from now on, I suspend the export of macadamia nuts. Who is he? To tell me he's going to suspend the sale of my product. Who is he? What is the difference between him and the mubeberu? Right? What has he got to do with my crop? That crop you're saying I should not export, today is rotting. After 3 months, it perishes. What have you done to me? Who are you to interfere with
What
my
I do
with
with
my
my
product,
crop.
Yes. Actually, with your livelihood.
with my livelihood.
Yes.
What is changed? What has changed?
Do you think those who sit in these, because essentially what you're saying, Jimmy,
Yes.
is that these individuals, as we see them, members of parliament, MCAs, senators, etc., ministers, that they are employees of this foreign? Is it?
No. They have been elected.
Are they?
But you're right. They are actually the board of directors
Of this
for other
company.
owners.
Are they aware?
That's the greatest moment we're going through right now as a world. Information age, technology, it has really bridged the gap because, education and the access to education and what you're educated about or what you're informed about is what makes decisions. We've been controlled for too long, for far too long. All right? So information that is now currently available to us on our phones is educating us, is making us aware. So, for example, today, those owners, for example, our coffee, our biggest importers of coffee from Kenya and Uganda primarily, right, is Germany, right? They import about $2 billion worth of our coffee, $2 billion, right? In Germany, they value add so-called that coffee, and they make $6.5 billion. Do you think those owners are going to allow us to make that $6.5 billion?
Why?
That's what we're competing with. Do you understand? Those are the ones that come and fund our elections here. Are they not behind IEBC? You all clap hands when we are so-called being funded by IEBC.
Do they?
Yes, they do. They fund IEBC greatly. Greatly. That's why they have a stake and they even go and sit at Bomas. They have a shareholding in the funding of those elections. Who is behind every education system that we've had here? Who? I saw the other day the minister saying that we don't want math until secondary school. Ask who is behind that sort of policy.
He's done a turnaround on that. And has come back
he
and
has said in high school.
He's now said that you can do simple maths if you are.
He said it is mandatory only in secondary school. Now, I think it's important to appreciate what is the value of math. I don't know. I mean, these were basic things we were taught, that math is critical thinking. So you had 3 subjects that you had to learn. You had to learn math, English, and Swahili. English and Swahili was for communication. And math was for critical thinking. So that you're bringing up a generation of thinkers, not slaves. Thinkers who can analyze an issue. Now, if you say secondary school, 10 million, just above 10 million, 10.4 million go to primary school.
Yeah.
4 million go to high school.
Yes.
So you have 6 million that go out, right? That have no critical thinking skills.
I think.
All right. I mean, really.
So for purposes of clarification, I think it's important for us to say that. So last week we saw a little bit of a turnaround from Julius Ogamba, who essentially said that, all right, fine. So you will have your compulsory math, the fundamental math at the primary school level. Come high school, when we go towards the pathway selection, that was where they said, was it necessary then to have math? And everybody said, okay, well, they're going to chuck the thing out. People came back and said, no, you can't have that. So they said, okay, fine. We will make it compulsory in 2 ways. That if you're going into anything apart from a STEM course, you will do the simple math. If you are going into the STEM course, then we will have you do applied math. So that was brought back.
Fine. But you imagine what was behind that thinking in the first place?
Exactly.
That we're even talking about it. What history did we learn? Were we taught the history of Kenya? Were we taught the history of our native history? What we were all about before the colonializer came here? No. I grew up learning British war history, British things. What does that got to do with my life here in Kenya?
So what do we do?
So the problem now, any great nation, and it's important to understand, for any nation that has ever developed, right, there are 3 fundamental things that they must succeed in. 3. One is education. Their people are educated. There's a high level of education among them. Right? That is critical. The second is a cultural revolution. They must know who they are about, what they are about, where they are going, what are their dictates, what is their trajectory, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, right? And it's encouraging to see that being developed in Kenya, right? Today we scorn on theft. We scorn on it. There was a time it was glorified, right? So we are developing our norms, but we need to identify who we are as a people called Kenya, right? Because we are just a mixed bag of God knows what, right? Now, the third is that we must have food security. People must be able to eat. Those are three fundamental things that take a nation to greatness. In other words, they define their trajectory. All right? That's synonymous across the board. As we are talking today, this education system of ours has been tampered and tampered and tampered and tampered. We don't even know where we are anymore. Today we are told CBC, we are told Sijui Nini. Now it's not performance-based, it's competence-based. Yeah, I don't know how somebody who is in Standard 6 knows her competence or his competence. Okay? You come to food security, we have 22 million Kenyans that are struggling to look for food every single day. And we do not have a cultural identity. So how do we come out of what you are saying? We have been denied the opportunity.
I've got to ask the question then, when do you cut the umbilical cord
Now.
between what happened with the colonialists and
Now.
where we are today? You've said the bad.
Yes.
We've come off of, being in this womb that cannot be delivered. And I'm saying, well, come on, cut the umbilical cord. The colonialists came fine. They went. There is this perceived notion that we still have this long umbilical cord attached. And you say that there's still a company that's essentially running the thing. But then there are people who are here, they're leaders, are they not? They are CEOs of government.
And do the question.
They are presidents.
The
Why do
question.
you always have to be tied to that?
I
Stand
agree.
up, for goodness sake.
I agree with you, Ndu, but the question is, if we look at just the term colonialism, you are spot on. And there's no arguing with what you're saying. If we look at neocolonialism, then the question is still alive. And the question, did they actually leave? And if they left, how did they leave? And if they remained, how did they remain?
They were allowed to.
And I top up on that and ask, if at all we have neocolonialism, yet in 2010 Kenyans went and voted for this new constitution that we say is the blueprint of this country, then how do we shake ourselves from the shackles of colonialists and neocolonialists and just be Kenyans who understand themselves and how they want to be ruled and governed?
I'm sorry, but Jimmy, before you answer that, are we not human beings?
We are.
Don't we have a head and a brain like them? Do we not have two legs?
Yes.
And our body functions are the same
Yeah.
Yes.
for all intents and purposes?
Absolutely.
Is it not true?
Yes.
That there are people who removed themselves from this same shackle and are thriving so much so that they've become a threat to the would-be powers who previously were colonialists.
Absolutely.
Do they not exist on this planet?
Oh, they do.
So what is the problem? Why are we not able to remove ourselves? That we say that we must be beholden even to this neocolonialism. Why?
So what happens is that you can never uproot something you don't know how deep it is rooted. So you must understand the original sin. The original sin is exactly what you said, colonialism that has led to neocolonialism. And we are saying that system is what you call the government of Kenya, which is actually just a company. It is literally just a company that extracts, exploits us, and dominates us with their police.
So Gachagua was right.
Well, he was part of it. So he knows it. All right?
So when he was
That
talking-
is, it
so when
didn't
he-
happen
so when
under...
he was talking of shareholding, he knew exactly
what
he was
saying.
talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
When you get Wagogo, and I said this the last time, when you have your tribal chieftains, right, which was instituted by the same colonialist, they go to the table, they say, I am representing my community. So the community is happy, divide and rule, and you come and you're given a slice of the cake, right, in terms of seats or favor, even personal. And the company moves on. But who are you really working for? If you really look at our exploitation, it is not those people. In fact, whatever it is they think they have taken is peanuts. It has been the owners that have benefited. And you see, the owner has been very good at metamorphosis of themselves. Who created this debt as an instrument? It was in the 70s that IMF and World Bank was born. The whole structure, right, after the British Empire, after the World War II, was it all transferred to America. And they transferred two things. One, democracy as a tool of governance, and capitalism. And what was capitalism?
Make as much money now and as all time.
Who for themselves.
Yes.
Right? Exploit as much as you can. And they created institutions to do it. And along the way, they protected themselves. They protected themselves on food security. Okay? Even Europe did. Because they couldn't believe they were coming to get food from Africans. Right? They were importing from us. They created structures and policies that cushioned them with subsidies for their own local farming and storage. Right? Today, where they used to get food from us, we are the ones now who are importing from them, who are importers. What happened? Right? They took away our instruments and they had collaborators. Just like when we were having the struggle for independence, you had collaborators. They were called home guards.
And
so anybody who tells you a revolution should be stopped. Like I hear some people come to this show and they tell you, oh, Gen Z, they were doing a revolution. We don't know what would have come out. Maybe the military would have come. Oh, it's unconstitutional. Something should... It's not different to how the home guards used to talk.
So we proliferate that
in the 50s.
We proliferate that whereby they used to get food from here. We started getting food from there.
Yes.
So much so now that we actually now even start to borrow money.
We never used to have debt.
We borrow the money that they were able to make from the proceeds of the things that they got from here in the first place. And for some reason, we can't see that.
We
so now we're in debt. If we look at, and it's not just Kenya, by the way.
Yes.
If we look across the African continent, so Kenya is $84 billion in debt. $84 billion in debt.
We have no debt in this country.
Nigeria is $184 billion in debt.
Yes.
I think the entire French Francophone part, if you look at it, their debt combined is about $300 billion.
Yes.
If we look at the southern part of the country and we combine the southern African states together, we're looking at about $1 trillion. I mean, for goodness sake.
Yes.
The entire African continent, if you want to look at it, is in debt to the folks who used to come here and take the resources and went and enrich themselves, and then they make profit from it, and then they...
Imperial British East Africa Company, which became the Kenya government, was also in debt. They built the railway
it was money
to extract and exploit, and they were in debt.
It was money which was borrowed.
It was money that was borrowed, and they couldn't pay it back.
Yeah.
Right? So where did we learn this? Here we are again, we build another railway that has got no benefit to us. In fact, it takes about 60 billion in operations every year.
Why?
60 billion, it's uneconomical. 60 billion shillings is used for maintenance and running costs between Mombasa and
running costs. Wait,
you know, you literally
This is documented that the Kenya government is spending 60 billion shillings every year.
It is uneconomical. It is not a viable project.
I actually don't understand this. Roads are repaired.
Yes.
Okay? People run on it, you see potholes. Railway lines don't have potholes. No, I'm being simplistic deliberately.
I get it.
But you have a locomotive that's moving.
I
that
understand.
Needs pads.
Yes, even that I understand. At 60 billion.
Yes.
Let me go to the beginning. Were these locomotives new?
And who is running it?
No. Were they new?
That's a good question. No. I think you better ask the purchaser.
Because when it is new, there are certain guarantees
you should
that
ask
come
the purchaser.
with a new product.
Yes.
So you are maintenance free.
They were new to us.
And take note, in that you have a company that is running it.
Yeah.
That has now switched to Kenya Railways, so-called.
Yes, I understand.
But that cost is still there.
You see, why I'm being simplistic about this is for a very simple reason. What the railway was supposed to do, it was supposed to not just make transportation easier, it was part of a logistics solution to ensuring that goods are moved in an economical way, in an expeditious way, and was supposed to reach Uganda. And actually it did. If you were to go by the old map of East Africa, Uganda reached around Naivasha. So you could say it reached Uganda. Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes.
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 There is such a map. Yes, Idi Amin even made that claim at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now we are referring to the current map.
Yeah.
Uganda is not in Naivasha.
Yeah. Yes.
Uganda is a little further down.
Yeah.
Are we saying that the example that is being given of the railway is an example you can even extend to the Kenya Airways, where you have a product that you are told is supposed to provide a service and a benefit, and then it falls short?
Let me tell you something, CT. The Mzungu who built the original railway was even smarter.
Yes.
Because a railway is only viable, you see, in most countries, when it is extracting a product from the interior,
Yes.
taking out.
Yes.
From the hinterland to where it can...
To the port. To the
Yes,
port.
or
To the port.
or to a
When you start
factory,
saying-
if such a
Yes.
factory exists,
Exists.
for value add.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, almost 80% of the traffic of Kenya Railways is from Mombasa to Nairobi. Very little. In fact, 70%. 30% goes to Western Kenya and Uganda. So you can't even say it was for the exports of Uganda. It's peanuts. All right? This thing was not viable from the get-go. It was not. The Mzungu one was clear. We're coming to extract all the way from Uganda,
so we can get
so we can get this product to England.
So they
All
were
right?
clear.
They were clear.
And it did get to
And it
Uganda.
did get to England.
Yes.
Here, the only people who are seeing the viability are importers. You import, those wagons are going back to Mombasa empty. All right? Because what cargo are we exporting? How much of it? Not for this line. So this was another extraction project to leave us with a burden, to further exasperate our slavery. There's no difference. In fact, the scale was just increased by our own people.